Hi, Jerome from Trailblazing Wine and TWTV, giving you hints and tips to get the most enjoyment out of your wines. What I'm talking about today is how to pair wine with food, which is a kind of emotive subject. It's got a lot of snobbery attached to it and also quite a lot of myths and things. And the thing is, to dismiss it completely won't help either, because it means you won't get the most enjoyment out of your food and your wine. And if you're spending a lot of money on wine and spending a lot of time and money on your food, it's best to get the most out of it, the most enjoyment. So at Trailblazing Wine, we actually categorise all our wines by colour, and the colours indicate the style of the wine, and the style of the wine not only helps you understand the taste that you prefer, but also the main thing with the style of the wine is to give you a little helping hand into what kind of foods each style goes with. So we broadly categorise our wines into 6 types. With our white wines, we have black wines, which are crisp and fresh wines. Our yellow wines are floral and aromatic. Our orange wines are rich and creamy. Our blue wines are light and fruity. Our red wines are smooth and silky. And our purple wines are big and powerful. But what does that all mean? Well, what it basically means is that it gives you a little helping hand in terms of how best to match your styles of wine with your food. So, starting with our crisp and fresh wines, the black styles. Now, these wines generally come from northern climates, so cooler climates rather than the hotter climates, and that means there's less aroma on the nose. They're lighter in style, but they often have a lot of complexity and almost mineral sort of notes. But this style of wine, fairly logically, the light wines are better matched with light flavoured dishes. If you go for a light wine and you have a really heavy dish, then all you can taste is the food and you can't taste the wine. Alternatively, if you go for a really heavy wine with a light dish, then you won't be able to taste the food either. So the crisp and fresh wines are really good with lighter dishes. This is perfect with seafood, delicate seafood and shellfish. Good as an aperitif because it won't overpower the foods that you're going to have later on, and also good with kind of salty snacks. So experiment across the range. There are tons of wines that from the northern climate that would fall under that category, but if you've got a light dish, then crisp and fresh wines are the ones to go for. Now, floral and aromatic wines, these are the sort of wines, if you think of Sauvignon, the grape variety Sauvignon Blanc, really aromatic would be from New Zealand, slightly less aromatic would be from the Loire Valley in France, but again there are a whole range of floral and aromatic wines that we categorise as yellow. Now, floral and aromatic wines really lift the dish, so again, kind of vibrant dishes work well, and also slightly spicy dishes, so you can also go for contrast. So sort of Chinese or Thai food works really well with floral and aromatic wines, but also spicy food, Indian takeaways, that kind of thing. The wine will lift over it. Now, often the floral and aromatic wines have relatively high acidity. Now, the high acidity is the mouth-watering feel, that freshness, and that really is great when you're having a spicy dish because it just cuts through that spiciness, and that's a lovely wine to go for. So to try the yellow wines with spicy dishes or aromatic dishes is a perfect option. Now, rich and creamy wines, and these often have had a bit of a bad reputation in the past, particularly in the 90s and 80s, particularly with Australian wines that had artificial oak added, and they were just overpowered. All you tasted was that vanilla, and after half a glass, your palate had totally had enough. But actually, the rich and creamy wines are now delicious when they're made in a sensitive way, where the grapes are of high enough quality. The result is you get a lovely creamy texture, but you still taste that fruit coming through. So rich and creamy wines are worth exploring. They're generally more expensive because oak is expensive. So if you go for a white Burgundy, then you're looking at spending sort of 15, 20 plus pounds. But the experience is worth it. And these rich and creamy wines, rather than having as an aperitif, are really good with food. And the kind of food you want really with these wines are, say, a sort of flavoursome fish dish with a creamy sauce, or anything with creamy sauce. But also, though, these wines even although they're white, they're big enough to cope with red meat. And I know it sounds totally what isn't said, but actually a rich and creamy white wine can work with steak in a béarnaise sauce, because the rich and creamy wines cut through the béarnaise sauce, but it's big enough in flavour to cope with the steak. So really play around with it. But again, the rule of thumb, the bigger the wine, the more flavoursome dishes you can cope with. So with a rich and creamy wine, white wine, do experiment. Now moving on to the reds, the blue style of our wines are light and fruity. Now, again, like the black sort of whites, these are from lighter climates. So the warmer the climate, the heavier the red generally, the lighter the climate, the lighter the wine. Now, the blue wines, generally you'll look at wines like Valpolicella Classico or Beaujolais, or even wines from the Loire, and wines all over include cool climates. Now, these wines are lovely with cold cuts. They work really well with chicken and ham, that sort of thing. But they also work well with, conversely, with dishes that do have a lot of flavour, because as a red wine, for sort of lighter dishes, they won't overpower the dish. So this is a very flexible type of red, but also it's a wine that you can have without food. So if someone wants a red wine, if someone prefers red wine to white wine and they're not having food, then a light and fruity red is a good one to go for. But a versatile style of wine. Going slightly heavier, we've got the smooth and silky reds. Now these reds are the most sort of wide variety of red wines. There's a classic Bordeaux, Cabernet Sauvignon, but also Cabernets from around the world. And these are delicious, versatile style of wine that work with most dishes, but a really classic, a good smooth and silky red works really well with your kind of roast beef dishes. But it's kind of the style of wine that, if you're worried about the wine not working with the food, it's one of your safest bets with red meat dishes in particular, so lamb and beef. It's a good option to go with. So certainly your roast Sunday lunch, perfect to experiment with these wines. And then moving to the really heaviest style of reds, the big and powerful reds. Now, again, it's a taste preference. Some people find them too overpowering, but it depends on the dish again. So these wines come from all over the world, but generally hotter regions. So, you're looking, in France, you're looking at the Languedoc. In Italy, you're looking at southern Italy, Puglia, that sort of area, or Sicily. And then Australia, sort of hotter climates in Australia. Now, these wines are really good with your very full flavoured dishes. So go with your stew, 24-hour stew, and dishes that are really rich dishes. And what you'll find is, when you taste a big and powerful red on its own, it might be too heavy. But when you pair it with a dish that is equally heavy, you'll find that the wine becomes softer and easier to drink, and you'll really get the most out of food. So this is just a start, but I hope that gives you enough to experiment and to start to try within this framework. And as I say, we really encourage you to explore across these different styles and pair them, follow that food pairing guide, and you're going to get a lot more out of your food and wine pairings. Thanks very much.